Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman gets ready to present her sixth and final budget for the second five-year term of the Modi government, the call from industry is for a continuation of measures to push growth while also sticking to the path of fiscal consolidation. While the ask isn't unusual or new, the nuancing is contextual. The Confederation of Indian Industry wants the government's Capex thrust to continue, even as it acknowledges the limits to the government's ability to deliver record-high spends again. The industry is also asking for measures to boost consumption, which include hiking the exemption limit on personal income tax. To drive the rural economy, industry is pushing for schemes like PM Kisan, PM Awas Yojana to drive equitable growth. The CII is also calling on the government to set up a full-fledged Ministry of Investment and also launch a pilot for an urban employment guarantee program. Well, before we get into the industry wish list, here is President Murmu highlighting the 4 pillars of the government's intended focus areas.
मेरी सरकार मानती है कि विकसित भारत की भव्य इमारत 4 मजबूत स्तंभों पर खड़ी होगी। ये स्तंभ है युवा शक्ति, नारी शक्ति, किसान और गरीब। देश के हर हिस्से, हर समाज में इन सभी की स्थिति और सपने एक जैसे ही हैं। इसीलिए इन 4 स्तंभों को सशक्त करने के लिए मेरी सरकार निरंतर काम कर रही है। मेरी सरकार ने टैक्स का बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा इन स्तंभों को मजबूत बनाने पर खर्च किया है।
Well, joining me now to take forward the CII wish list is R. Dinesh, President of CII, Sanjiv Puri, President-designate CII and Chairman and Managing Director at ITC, and Chandrajit Banerjee, the DG at CII. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us here on the CNBC-TV18 Budget Countdown. Dinesh, let me start by asking you, this is, of course, an interim budget. It's a vote on account. Expectations are tempered, but we do have the 2019 precedent where many new schemes were announced, including the big one, the PM Kisan. What's the expectation? What's the mood of industry as we get into the budget?
Thank you, Shereen. I think if you look at it, obviously continuity is the core focus, which I'm 100% sure will be the scenario as well. Second, and the most important, is obviously ensuring that we continue on this growth path, and that would be spending on the infrastructure side, which again is, I think, a very fair expectation that it will continue in the same way. Having said that, I think equitable growth has been one of the core focus of this government, and whether it be both from a rural side as well as, I would call it, the sectors where there is a need to support and grow or support and enhance growth, I think that's an expectation which all of us are having will be the focus of this interim budget.
On Capex, and Dinesh, I think there is an acknowledgement on the part of CII that the government cannot continue the kind of historic record spends that we've seen, especially in the last 2 years. So you're hoping for the government to deliver a Capex growth of about 20% to 12 lakh crore rupees. This is, of course, higher than what we saw pre-pandemic.
Yes, exactly. And I think the advantage which I think the government had done earlier was that to front load it, meaning that the continuity of the spend did not stop immediately after the budget. So I think that's what will be important for us going forward. So we do agree that there is not a scope for significantly increasing the outlay, but a 20% increase is again a large percentage increase, and we believe that will further help crowd in the private sector investments to come in.
Yeah, Capex growth of 20% to 12 lakh crore rupees is certainly nothing to scoff at. Let's go across to Sanjiv Puri. Sanjiv, many thanks for joining us here on the Budget Countdown. Let's talk about consumption and what more the government can do as far as spurring consumption is concerned. What do you believe should be the priority at this point in time? And more importantly, what are the trends that you're picking up on in terms of consumption, both volume as well as value?
Thank you, Shereen. Well, first of all, let me also start by reiterating what Dinesh said. I think the approach that's been taken in prior budgets, I think, is the right one. The right enablers are being put in place, and we certainly look forward to those continuing. So that's the broad theme. Now, the area, as far as, the area that needs, I would say, some more attention and some more investments, though there are also areas where investments are already happening, I think would be on the rural side. And specifically, what is it that can be done? I think we can look at greater rural infrastructure spends. I think the idea of supporting the states is a fine one, because a lot of that find itself into rural areas. I think more of that will be helpful. One of the areas that's been bothering rural is the weather events, and that's what impacts agriculture and therefore incomes. So I think a kind of a strong movement for enhancing agriculture resilience, both through better coverage of irrigation and also bringing in the whole climate smart agriculture practices through a public-private partnership model. And I think this government has been very proactive in working along with private sector as a partner in the development of the nation. I think there is another opportunity which is slowly emerging at this point of time because of the momentum that we see in certain wood-based industries, particularly like the real estate. India is in a situation where more wood is starting to get imported. And recently the government has brought in the enablers for some degraded forest lands or unused forest lands to be leased to private players. I think if you can create an economic model out of it, I think that will provide tremendous impetus. And while wood will be harvested a few years later, but gainful employment will be created right way.
The expectation is that there will, of course, be a continuation of schemes like the PM Kisan scheme, which, by the way, was brought in the 2019 interim budget, and perhaps the allocation could be enhanced. So from 6,000, which is the current allocation, to about 8,000, 9,000. That's the expectation, given the rise that we have seen as far as inflation is concerned. Do you believe that that is necessary today, and that will be a meaningful boost to consumption?
I think absolutely, because that number was fixed quite some time back, and there is inflation that has happened in between. So certainly relook at the number it would be useful. And I might also add that I think the enhanced MSPs, the bonuses that are going out for crops, and the positive is so far the current crop, at least the wheat plant, the planting is in good shape. Hopefully, all that will augur well for the rural economy, and we should see the impact of it hopefully in the next 3-4 months.
Okay, CB, let's continue with this theme on pushing the rural economy, and let's talk about the focus on women. And I think if you heard the President's speech or you heard the Prime Minister's comments, Nari Shakti, that seems to be one of the key pillars that the government intends to focus on. Linking that to perhaps additional measures or new measures. Yesterday, we had the former Finance Secretary Subhash Garg with us, suggesting that there could be, direct benefit transfers to women. It's a large voting constituency that the government would like to address as well. What would your expectations be on this front?
I think it's, you talked about voters. I would see that as a 50% of our workforce. And we are not really being able to leverage 50% of our workforce and effectively. So to do that, I think there are two things. Of course, a government push, that is a policy ecosystem push, which has always been there. You've seen how a government push towards from the CSR at one point in time, years back, pushed about corporate spending on CSR. I think a little facilitation from the government in terms of when we talk about creche, when we talk about other benefits which could be extended, I think that goes a long way in corporate behavior, in seeing how pay parity, etc. This would be extremely essential for us to see much more women into our workforce. So let me ask you specifically,
CB, do you expect some sort of incentivization as far as the child care industry is concerned? Because that clearly has been one of the big challenges in being able to get more women to participate in the workforce. On that, do you see a specific way of incentivizing the growth of the child care industry?
Indeed, absolutely so, and I think there should be much more needed to be done. Again, here there is a need for private-public partnership here, government creating an ecosystem in terms of policy ecosystem, enabling a policy ecosystem, and then private sector being awarded, rewarded, and incentivized to taking it forward. I think that's the model that we need to follow, and I see that coming in, and that's very much required for when we are looking at an economy which will grow at a 7% plus over the next few years.
No, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. In fact, we've seen some interesting measures coming in. Just overnight, we had the Road Transport and Highways Ministry putting out a notification saying that there must be parity when we talk about hiring women as far as highway construction is concerned. There must be pay parity, and that the government along with the private sector must ensure that facilities are put in place to ensure that women participate in that economic activity. But Dinesh, since we are talking about economic activity and we are talking about employment as well, you know, here's what I find interesting, that we're talking about a pickup in private capex, we're talking about an economy that's likely to grow at 7% even in FY25, and yet the CII is asking for an urban employment guarantee scheme. Why is that?
No, I think it's not a question of, I would call it an additional avenue for providing for growth. I think this is I would call it a necessity for equitable support. So if you look at the underprivileged or the lesser privileged sections within the rural, I think there have been various schemes which have been announced. And the urban guarantee scheme actually provides, I would call it the security blanket or the fallback option in case they don't get into the full value chain, which obviously economic activity will benefit from. So it is not to exclude an area which is the urban, is why the reason for the ask, and not specifically, I would call it, reflecting anything on the economic growth prospects or the opportunity to grow. In fact, it's the reverse, right? So if you look at it, we have also asked for an employment-linked incentive, like the production-linked incentive, which are sectors where there are going to be significant improvement in terms of job opportunities. So that for us is the positive side, and the security blanket is just a backup in case you are not able to provide that.
Sanjiv Puri, let's talk about the other focus area, and that is manufacturing. That is to make good of the opportunity of this global supply chain diversification that is currently underway. In fact, just overnight, we've seen measures being announced to bring down the tariffs as far as components for mobile phone manufacturing are concerned. This has been the ask of the mobile phone manufacturers as well. The CII is proposing a full-fledged investment ministry. Now, what is it that you would like this investment ministry to do?
You see, the whole idea here is that there are, when you make an investment, there are many areas, including, especially at the state, where some approvals and clearances are to be done. I think the whole idea is that if you can create a department that is focused on hand-holding, a department that can facilitate all these areas, a department that can facilitate the investor also, especially the investors from overseas, to understand all the possibilities and all the provisions that are available within India and all the incentives that are available. And I'll give you an anecdote also. When we had gone on some overseas delegation, that is CII delegation, this was exactly the point that some of the potential investors made, that we are having some kind of a difficulty in navigating because there are many straits. So for me to decide where to invest, what is the incentives available in various places, what is the advantage of certain places. See, some of these aspects are not completely known to them because they've not worked in India before, they've not visited, they don't have in-depth knowledge. So I think a ministry that kind of provides focused attention to this, that was really the thought behind this.
But Sanjiv Puri, on this issue of duty rationalization, we have of course seen an uptick as far as import duties are concerned over the last several years, ostensibly with the idea of making in India. But across sectors, and this is a demand that's coming in, that is proving to be counterproductive, and hence there needs to be a duty rationalization. What more is industry expecting on that front? What is the ask?
See, ultimately, we are proposing from a CII perspective that we should look at really three broad bands of duty. One is for basic primary products, intermediates, and finished products, and this should be graded, and it should be ultimately in a moderate, so that manufacturing within India, manufacturing for domestic consumption, manufacturing for exports, etc., all of these become competitive. That's the whole idea. So the glide path we are recommending is to ultimately converge to three levels: at the primary level, at the intermediate, and at the finished goods level, and at very moderate rates is what we are proposing.
Okay, CB, let's address the issue of climate and energy security, because both of these have been identified as focus areas by the government. What's the expectation in the interim budget? We've been reporting that perhaps the government could announce a support package for electric mobility. We've already got the FAME scheme, which expires in March. What is it that you realistically expect in the interim budget? Of course, we do have a full-fledged budget coming up in a few months.
So, this is a space where India has taken phenomenal leadership, and you are seeing the type of action taken with regards to, as you mentioned, electric mobility and many other areas, be it if you look at what we have been talking about, the Biofuel Alliance or the green hydrogen, and this entire, the way that we are bringing down fossil fuel. But what's important, and I would like to probably see some indication in the interim budget, is about a green transition fund. And that's going to be critical and important. And how much would that be would, of course, depend on a lot. But second is also defining of the green, so that we don't get into this entire space of greenwashing and all of that. So a clear understanding, and so that we are all across the sectors been able to contribute, and across the sectors, I'm talking about even the hard-to-abate sectors, as to how we can all move towards the path towards the 2070, when we have talked about a net zero India, and then the responsibility will go into different sectors, different states, different ministries, coming on to a same page. So I think there are 3 different areas which I mentioned, which would be of very critical importance. The Green Transition Fund, the definition, and also bringing into one page the different pathways that ministries and states and industry sectors would be looking at it.
Dinesh, coming back to you now, one of the challenges that the government is going to face and industry is facing as well, and an opportunity also, is this move towards AI adoption. What we are seeing, for instance, across the tech sector, layoffs, restructuring of the workforce on account of AI adoption. Now, the government has sort of talked about an AI policy that is going to be a priority area, but what are the next steps that you expect on this front?
Actually, if you look at it, my view is that maybe India is better placed to take advantage of AI and also the utilization of it in a very responsible manner. And I think, as you rightly said, I think this government has been very focused. I think Honorable Prime Minister himself has made it very clear that AI in India will be used in the best manner possible, in a responsible manner possible. So if you look at how we have derived the advantage out of the digital transition and also utilization of digital public infrastructure, I believe we can take the lead on the AI side. So while yes, it may have a challenge in terms of what we would call as the typical low-end back-end jobs, but having said that, it gives us an advantage of upskilling and providing for an opportunity to create better value for both the people who are involved in that sector and the people and the country as a whole. Obviously, this is going to require sharp focus in terms of upskilling people and providing the necessary support for all of them to get the exposure to be ready for that. And I think that's an evolution which we see as the opportunity.
So much talk around growth, so much talk around opportunities, supply chain diversification, so on and so forth. But private capex, many sectors now at 75, 80, 85% utilization. Are we finally going to see the big ticket private investments coming in? Sanjiv, let me start by asking you.
The global scenario is not conducive. Domestic is a positive. And you're right, capacity utilizations are up. I think one of the things that may be holding it back might be some of the uncertainties account of the global situations. But as capacity utilization goes up, investments are bound to happen. We are already seeing some green shoots of investments. The PLI scheme, we heard this announcement is expected to generate about 1 lakh crores of investment. We are seeing investments in industries indexed to infrastructure, in chemicals, we are seeing in pharmaceuticals. I can tell you from the industry that I come from, we are seeing investments there. We in our own example, we did some facilities last year. We are also building some more manufacturing facilities this year. So it is starting to happen. Had the global situation been better, I think it would have been a much more robust situation because all the enablers are also in place. The government has taken very proactive steps to improve the balance sheets or the health of the financial sector. Corporate balance sheets are better. The corporate taxes have been rationalized earlier, so which makes investments even more attractive.
CB, I'm going to put you in a spot. If I were to ask you one new scheme that's likely in this budget, what would it be to start with? That's question number 1. 2, how long do you believe the budget speech is likely to be? That's question number 2.
I think, if I see what the economic statement, the last 10 years have been very strategic thinking also. I would think that we need to see in this budget a lot of strategic qualitative thinking. You mentioned about AI. I would think that there has to be a thought on AI moving towards a national AI policy or an AI mission mode, in fact, to see how we are able to look at strategic issues of those kinds. The second bucket would be, if you really look at the geo-economic scenario today, the geopolitical scenarios today, I would think that we really need to look at areas of like critical minerals, etc., and see how we address through different strategic areas as to how we are closely monitoring such. Even I would think a national economic security board type of a beginning under the NSC, which is going to be important for us to really watch the type of trade dynamics that's happening in the world and the type of trade security which is. This is very, very critically important from the point of view of what you asked, Shereen, earlier in the question as to, you talked about how do the concerns of employment, etc. A lot of it would also get addressed if now, specifically to your question number one, if we really see some things focused towards the small and the mid-sized company, and that's going to be from where employment is really going to be generated. And for when we look at the large space, so my specific, I will really look out for that. What are we giving to that? So all in all, it could be. I would not think it should be anything less than what we have seen in the last 2 years in terms of the timing of the speech. But I think the quality of the speech would be strategically very, very strong.
Many of the ideas that we've spoken of, many of the insights that have been shared here by Sanjiv Puri, Dinesh and Chandrajit Banerjee may find their way into the budget. We will find out when the Finance Minister addresses the nation for the 6th time, presenting her 6th consecutive budget. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. We will, of course, see you again in less than 24 hours from now. But for today, thanks very much for joining us on the Budget Countdown with the key highlights of what industry is hoping the budget delivers on.